What TV show scene will you never forget? I knew the Scrubs one would be here. That episode is an emotional mess. It took me a while to put together that Ben was walking around without his camera with Dr. Cox. He made a comment before that the only way he would take the camera off is if he dies. Such a great show. It was an episode of Dr. Green is on duty when a woman in labor comes in with her husband, all excited because the baby is coming. Over the course of the episode things start going wrong, develop into major complications and the mother ends up dying. They manage to save the baby though. Last scene they show the father, same actor who played Josh on West Wing, Brad Whitford I think, holding the baby and sitting next to his dead wife's hospital bed. I had never seen an episode of TV like that. It was intense. Buffy, the body, mommy, and for the most gut-wrenching thing I have ever seen, we're not supposed to move the body, followed by the look of absolute horror as the shock wears off and she realized what she just said. Sarah Michelle Gellar deserved awards for that show. If anyone ever doubted her abilities, tell them to watch that episode. Absolutely perfect television. So I watched Buffy back in the day but stopped around season 4. I recently in the past year picked it back up. Joyce dying wasn't a surprise because of course in the past 20 years I'd heard all about it, but I'd never seen the episode. I also watched it while I was a bit stoned and this episode is done unlike any other episode in the entire series, so it was just so intense, and with my sense of time being warped, the scenes felt that much more gut-wrenchingly long. The silence was deafening. In the final episode of the first season of The Legend of Korra, the scene where Tarlok kills himself and his brother as he is saying we will be together just like the good old days, while his brother is shedding a tear of joy unaware of his upcoming demise. This scene shocked me the first time I've watched it, but I was too young to fully comprehend this scene and its implications. As I rewatched it recently I anticipated it, but never imagined how deeply unsettling it will be to me. On Family Ties, I remember that episode where Alex, portrayed by Michael J. Fox, has just survived a car crash and needs to see a therapist. During the session he reenacts key points in his life he remembers vividly. One of those memories is him singing with his friend, who killed in the previously mentioned car crash. During this memory, he pleads with his friend to not leave, and when he does, Alex sits for a few seconds crying, they snapping partially back into reality with his therapist. He then experiences all of the people who have changed his life with the previously mentioned cutscenes saying positive things about him. At the end of the episode, after all that, he in his therapy chair and says one thing, "My name is Alex Keaton," then it cuts to black. That scene in Lost where Miles looks at his dad reading to his infant self, it's in that moment that Miles realizes his dad did care about him and starts tearing up. The scene is further cemented as Miles walks away and his dad sees him and tells him that he needs him. The voice of Miles when he replies "you do" is amazing. That minute or so is so amazing as providing greater context for Miles, as up to this point we all knew he hated his dad because he abandoned his mom and him. He learned his dad actually loved him and you see the cathartic release he has and it's beautiful. When Walter White lets Jane out next to a passed out Jesse, just absolutely crushed me. The whole arc with Jesse and Jane was a roller coaster. The awkwardness of meeting and feeling each other out, the rise in mutual attraction and sexiness, the romance of the connection bonding into love, the anxiety over the relapse, and then ultimately the pure decimation of her death. Another scene that didn't quite hit as hard but still crushed me in the moment was Grace's death in Peaky Blinders. She was Tom's anchor, the only thing keeping him in the real world, and just for her to go out like that, There's a scene in Barney Miller where they have a guy in custody who tried to rob a bank using a bazooka, which ended up going off during the attempted robbery. The robber's ears are still ringing and he can't hear so well, so he keeps shaking his head and rubbing his ears. Detective Wojo, who is this working-class veteran, is talking to the robber, but is indifferent to the guy's hearing problem. The guy tried to rob a bank after all. The robber, tired of not getting any sympathy, finally asks Wojo if he's ever fired a bazooka, and Wojo answers yeah, in Nam, and the robber says, oh sure, outdoors. Not a major moment, just a funny exchange that was characteristic of the show. Og's death was absolutely badass. His death was honestly one of the most disappointing parts of the entire 15-season series. He himself said that he'd be there to reap God. He said he wanted to reap Sam because Sam was so interesting, but when Dean killed him he was just gone. Fucking bullshit. Billy in comparison was absolutely pathetic. I was raised on murder mysteries from birth and up. One scene I thought I dreamed up. It was 95 bodies laid respectfully out on a courtyard. They were covered in blankets. A monk was counting the bodies so he could get someone to perform their rites. They were all hanged by orders of the king, only. The orders only called for 94. I was probably around 2 or 3 when I saw it for first time. It wasn't until I was around 15 that we got the whole series on DVD. Cadfael Episode 1, One Corpse Too Many. I love that show still to this day. I think I only saw this once and it was decades ago just watching reruns, but it really sticks with me. There is a scene in MSH where the surgeon, Charles Emerson Winchester III, MD, goes to speak with the soldier after surgery. Charles explains that the soldier had extensive damage to his leg, but that he had been able to save it from amputation by transplanting some tendons from the soldier's hand. Though the soldier will likely have a slight loss of dexterity in the hand, he will now make a full recovery and have full use of his leg. The soldier just raised his hand and says, "I'm a concert pianist." Charles goes from delighted and triumphant to being clearly stricken. His character was portrayed as an old-school New England aristocrat, icy cold and a high-culture snob. This is one of the few times you see him being really human, as you see him go from glee at his own extremely talented performance to guilt and empathic sadness, and you also know he loves classical music and values is in a way most of the other surgeons do not, so he understands more deeply what has been lost. It's a short scene, but there is so much in there in terms of complex emotions, and about how you be a hero and still have equivocal results. The Shield. Asvada getting sexually assaulted by those two guys. It was very uncomfortable to watch. Rescue Me, when Captain Jerry Riley committed suicide. It was shocking. Sons of Anarchy. Basically any time a reoccurring and/or main character died. Also any scene with Otto. That dude was insane, in the best ways. BoJack Horseman, when the character's secretariat treed the view from halfway down. S6CP15. I was going through a rough time when I watched that scene. I think it's one of the best anti-suicide message I've ever seen. It helped me, and it continues to help me. I go back to watch that scene once in a while to remind myself. The entire episode of The Body from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I've watched the entire series with my sister and my boyfriend, at separate times, and it's just an episode that sticks with you. They both feel the exact same way. It gives us chills to discuss and honestly makes my boyfriend so uncomfortable that he'll never watch it again. It truly makes me feel like I'm intruding on a private moment in someone else's life and experiencing those raw emotions with them. I really appreciate the way it was directed. It made me feel a bit sick and dirty, like I needed a shower afterwards. Ah yeah, this is the best episode of the series, right before the attack on Foy when Garnier and Toy get hit and Buck Compton finds them and just drops his helmet calling for the medic. That is tough to watch. Similarly in episode 6 of the Pacific when the gunnery sergeant, who fought in WWI can't take it anymore and the LT has to move him away, also tough to watch. Desmond and Penny's phone call at the end of The Constant in Lost. I know it's popular to shit on Lost nowadays, but the way that episode blended time travel and romance was absolutely unforgettable. If you're not tearing up at the end of their phone call, you're not a person. The final scene of episode 5, season 6 of Voltron: The Legendary Defender, Keith fighting Shiro. The way they fall, the music, Keith just crying, it was so powerful. It embodied everything I liked from the show with great fighting thrown in the mix, and it's also sadly everything they fucked up in the ending. Low. An episode of Homicide, life on the streets where this guy who turns out to be a total asshole falls and is stuck between a train and a platform. They show that he's been bent backwards at the waist. The detectives are both trying to find out who pushed him and dealing with the fact that they know the second he's pulled out he's going to die. The fact that he's an argumentative misogynist but he's going to die and therefore you're forced to feel bad for him is part of the plot. I'll never forget Pussy's death when she was trying to protect Susan in Oyton. The following episode is also super tough as it goes through Pussy's life a bit before she went to prison, and it's heart-wrenching to see her promising young life wasted by a system that never really cared about her. And the scene where Susan is trying to put all of Pussy's books on top of her so she can feel the weight of being suffocated like Pussy is so sad. The scene in Blade 3 where it rains blood. I was chilling while searching to find something on the TV and I had it not very loud but louder than usual when I go see what is in my favorite channel, and there it is. The scene of blood with a lot of people screaming at a loud volume. It kinda scared me and I lost all hunger at that moment when I was having dinner. I know it's not that bad but whatever, it'll just post it. I was watching this show called The Washington Post Video News and it had this episode where a bunch of stupid conspiracy theorists and Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building, and then it pulled one of the greatest plot twists where the Capitol building was actually raided for real. So crazy. The one that really got me was Charles' arc in this finale when he teaches a group of Chinese prisoners Mozart, and later finds one of them dying on his operating table and he learns the others were already dead. He has to essentially renounce his love for music because it's too painful to think about. The scene from Pushing Daisies where they kiss through cling film because Ned can't touch the Chuck without killing her forever due to his superpower. It was heartwarming, sad and romantic all at the same time, and the whole series was so beautifully made and has one of the best TV universes I've ever seen. It was such a joy to watch. When Negan slaughtered Abraham and Glenn in The Walking Dead, that whole episode was gut-wrenching, but that specific scene has haunted me ever since. It was amazingly shot, and it felt so surreal. The emotions I experienced watching this scene were unreal and out of this world, especially when he killed Glenn in front of his poor pregnant wife Maggie. Like that right there made my heart hurt so bad. The graphics were on point, gory and bloody, made me think about the entire show and characters and everything. I was genuinely scared. I felt fear as if I was physically there, and not to mention, this whole scene and confrontation very much could have been avoided, which makes me even more emotional about it. Damn. In the 70s, Tree was a TV show called Taxi. It's the show where Judd Hirsch, Danny DeVito, Tony Danza and Christopher Lloyd got their start. Christopher Lloyd played a character named Reverend Jim. This guy was a homeless drunk and drug addict. He was just completely out of it and was hysterical. There's this scene. It is by far the funniest scene on any TV show I have ever seen. Okay, Here's a few more from my childhood. Dukes of Hazzard when Bo got amnesia and Boss told him he was his son. And when Boss was staying with the Dukes and was sleeping in Daisy's bed when she came in and started changing for bed, every boy in school was talking about that one. Incredible Hulk when Banner was confronted by the Old Man Hulk. Doubt it'll be as popular as the other ones here, but it's from my all-time favorite anime, Code Geass. For me it's when Lelouch confronts his father for the second time. There's so many things I love about it, but if I have to pick just one moment from that whole exchange, it's when he appeals to God to ask him to not stop the march of time, then gets Geass in his second eye. You know Bubbles' final scene in The Wire, where he finally comes to terms with his accidental killing of Sherrod as well as the decades of heroin addiction through opening up about his grief to his support group, the American Dad scene where Roger spoofs that speech. Goku's transformation plus the bird revival scene in the Cooler's Revenge Dragon Ball movie. Cooler had such a strong negative energy that living things started fading away around him. A bird fell next to Goku, being one of the triggers for his transformation. He pumps some energy into it and the bird flies away. There was a YouTube version, ever since removed, where Cooler talked in a very menacing, disturbed, exasperated voice, i.e. I am the supreme ruler of the universe, the bringer of death, i.e. get to decide WHO lives and WHO dies. Then Goku beats him. Andy is such a creepy stalker. He followed me home, and he has a girlfriend. I should get a restraining order. Aaron Hannon. Pool Party episode. Season 8. The Office. You or consider this as me just sketching, like when someone sketches, say, a house or a penis. Isn't it odd how all the houses are colonial, and all the penises are circumcised? Robert California. The Office US. Every morning, for as long as she lived, Dylan got up before dawn and watched the sun come up. Babylon 5 finale, Sleeping in Light. Anyone who can watch Dylan and Sheridan's parting, and her subsequent solitary vigils at dawn with the memory of her husband beside her, without sobbing uncontrollably, is a monster. Series finale of 6 Feet Under. The final 5 minutes montage. Totally heartbreaking. That Sia song still gets me ever 10 years later. Series finale to The Good Place, when everyone passes through the arch. Schitt's Creek, when Alexis and Ted break up. Also Stevie's cabaret performance. True Detectives, when Matthew McConaughey goes undercover. Truly felt like you were there. And it was fucking anxiety-inducing intense. The Boys, the Nazi shed kicking of Now Stumpfront. I just watched that episode last night. The look in Charles' face when the young man reveals he's a concert pianist. That's why I like Charles. He may have been the stick in the mud, but he had some great moments. Also the Christmas episode where he gives chocolate to the orphans and then discovers it was sold on the black market. He confronts the man who sold it, who explained he sold it to pay for cabbage and rice for the children instead. Charles has a great line about "I gave children dessert who had no dinner," paraphrased. It really gets to me. Re-Zero-S Monap 15. The snow slowly falling over Subaru's headless corpse, holding Rem's body while the beast of the end watches them in the distance. All the while the blood-red credits travels across the screen for what feels like an eternity before Subaru returned by death to his latest checkpoint. After an absolutely crazy episode, it ends in a way that just trumps everything that happened before that. It feels like something out of a movie, the outside of madness indeed. The ending of the episode of Jurassic Park, Futurama. While Futurama had its sappy and sentimental moments in the past, luck of the fish, they were ultimately happy moments. Jurassic Park comes along and hits you across the face. I cry just thinking about, and I'm tearing up now writing about.
Bye.